What if everything you thought was love was actually just a wound you learned to be comfortable in? What if the reason you keep ending up in the same toxic cycles, the same one-sided relationships, the same moments where someone crosses a line and you just let it go, isn't because you're not smart enough to see it, but because you were trained from the very beginning to call that pain normal? Trauma is not loud. It doesn't always look like a scar or a diagnosis. Sometimes it looks like a woman who laughs off being talked down to, a man who apologizes before the other person even finishes hurting him, a person who doesn't even know they deserve better because better was never part of what they were shown. Here's what the research tells us, and here's what I know from thousands of real, raw human stories. You did not choose this, but you can choose what happens next. You can unlearn it. Not overnight, not easily, but completely, courageously, and permanently.
Stay with me, because what I'm about to share might be the most important conversation you have with yourself today. I want to start with something uncomfortable. Most of us are walking around right now, in our jobs, our friendships, our relationships, tolerating things we were never supposed to tolerate. And we've told ourselves a beautiful lie about why. We call it patience, we call it loyalty, we call it love. But what if it isn't any of those things? What if what we're actually doing is surviving? I've spent years sitting in research rooms, reading thousands of interviews, listening to people talk about shame, about worthiness, about the terrifying vulnerability of being human. And one pattern appeared so consistently it shook me. The people who struggled the most to recognize disrespect weren't the ones who had never been loved. They were the ones who had been loved badly, inconsistently, conditionally. And somewhere along the way, their hearts learned to call that love. That is what trauma does. It doesn't just break you. It redefines your entire understanding of what normal feels like. When you grow up in a home where love came with conditions, where affection disappeared when you made mistakes, where you had to earn safety, where chaos was just Tuesday, your nervous system adapts. It has to. That's not weakness, that is biology. Your brain literally rewires itself around the environment you're in because survival demands it. The problem is survival mode has no off switch. And so you carry that rewired nervous system into adulthood, into boardrooms, into bedrooms, into friendships, and you keep doing what kept you safe as a child. You keep shrinking, you keep apologizing, you keep accepting, and nobody questions it because you're so good at it. Here's what I know about shame, and I've studied it for 2 decades, so stay with me. Shame is not guilt. Guilt says I did something bad. Shame says I am something bad. And trauma almost always leaves shame behind as a gift, a poisonous, invisible gift that you carry in your chest every single day. Shame tells you that the reason people treat you poorly is because you deserve it. Shame convinces you that if you were better, smarter, quieter, more agreeable, then maybe finally you would be enough. And so you perform, you morph, you shrink. Researchers call one version of this fawning. And I want you to really hear this because it might be the most important thing I say today. Fawning is not kindness. Fawning is not generosity. Fawning is what happens when a child learns that the only way to survive emotional chaos is to become whatever the other person needs. You smile when you're hurt. You apologize when you've done nothing wrong. You laugh off comments that cut right through you. You make yourself small, invisible, agreeable, not because you want to, but because somewhere in your nervous system, a little version of you learned that small and agreeable people don't get abandoned, don't get hit, don't get left. That strategy saved you once. It is destroying you now. And your body, your body knows. Your body has been keeping a record long before your mind was willing to look at it. The tight chest when someone criticizes you in a certain tone. The way your stomach drops when you check your phone and there's nothing there. The way you feel your shoulders rise around certain people, bracing, always bracing for impact. That is not anxiety without cause. That is your nervous system perfectly trained, doing exactly what it was programmed to do: detect threat, protect the self, survive the moment. The tragedy is this: peace starts to feel dangerous. When someone treats you with consistent kindness, with real respect, with love that doesn't have conditions, your body doesn't relax. Your body gets suspicious because calm was never safe. Calm was always just the eye of the storm. And so people who have been beautifully, devastatingly trained by trauma often, not always, but often, walk away from the safest people in their lives and they walk right back to familiar chaos because familiar feels like home, even when home was never safe. So what do we do with all of this? We start with the one thing that every piece of research on resilience, on post-traumatic growth, on genuine human connection points back to, and that is honesty. Not performed honesty, not the kind of honesty you perform on social media. The raw, terrifying, quiet honesty that happens when you are alone and you ask yourself, am I accepting things I know I shouldn't accept? Am I calling survival love? Am I performing so well that I've forgotten who I actually am? Because here is the truth that will set you free and scare you at the same time. You are not broken. You are not defective. You are not too damaged to deserve something real. You are a person who learned to survive in conditions that no one should have had to survive. And that is not your identity. That is your history. And history, with the right work, with the right courage, with honesty and time, can be changed, not erased, not forgotten, changed. Setting a boundary is not aggression. It is not selfishness. It is not being difficult. It is the single bravest sentence you may ever speak that doesn't work for me. 4 words. 4 words that declare, without apology, I have a self-worth protecting. I am not available for this anymore. But I'm not going to lie to you and tell you it's easy. Because the first time you hold a boundary with someone who's used to having none from you, it will feel like you're the bad person. It will feel like abandonment. It will feel like you're breaking something that was never supposed to be fixed. Your nervous system will panic. Your shame voice will scream. Every old wound will whisper, see, you pushed them away. See, you're too much. See, you should have stayed quiet. Don't listen. Stay in it. Breathe through it. Because that discomfort, that specific discomfort, is not a sign that you did something wrong. It is a sign that you are doing something new. And new is always uncomfortable before it becomes brave. Unlearning is not a moment. I want you to let that settle. It is not a revelation you have at 3 a.m. It is not one therapy session. It is not one speech. It is 1,000 small, exhausting, courageous choices made daily, made imperfectly, made anyway. It is the day you stop apologizing for a tone in your voice that was never that harsh. It is the day you let a text go unanswered and don't spiral into guilt. It is the day you look at your reflection, really look, and say, I am worth more than what I have been accepting, and you don't immediately follow it with but. There is no but. You are worthy now. Not when you've healed more, not when you're less difficult, not when you've earned it, now as you are, with all the messy, complicated history that brought you here. The research is clear on this. The people who move through trauma into genuine wholeness are not the ones who had the easiest paths. They are the ones who dared to look at the truth of their lives, without armor, without performance, and they chose imperfectly and bravely to stop betraying themselves. That is available to you, right now, today. Not because someone gave you permission, but because you finally stopped waiting for it. This is where it all comes together. Trauma didn't make you weak. It made you a survivor, and surviving took everything you had. But you are not in that fight anymore. And the greatest act of courage available to you now is not to fight harder. It is to finally put down the armor. You were trained to accept disrespect. You were taught without words that your needs were too loud, your feelings were too much, your worth was conditional, and you believed it because you had to, because you were small and the world was big and belief kept you safe. But you are not small anymore, and the world is not that place anymore. You have a choice now that you didn't always have. The choice to say no more. The choice to recognize disrespect for what it is, not love, not normal, not something you have to earn your way out of, but something you can simply refuse to accept, quietly, firmly, without apology. Healing is not going to be perfect. You will slide back. You will have days where the old patterns feel louder than the new ones. That is not failure. That is human. What matters is that you keep choosing one honest conversation at a time, one held boundary at a time, one brave truth at a time, to come back to yourself. Because you were never the problem, you were just living in one, and now you get to live differently.